Welcome to The Visible Artist. My name is Sophie Loxton-Lucas, and this week I'm delighted to bring you a conversation with the artist Olly Fathers. We chat about the Jealous rooftop mural, how Olly's work was selected by the Soho House team for the collection, his successful foray into the world of AR, technology, and much, much more. I do hope you enjoy this conversation. Hi, Olly. Thank you so much for having me in your studio. It's great to be here.
Hi, thank you. Yeah, you're welcome. It's nice to have you here.
When I was looking at all the projects that you've done in recent years, many of which I remember in person, I'm struck by how incredibly impressive your CV is. So although I'd love to talk all about the work that I can see in the room and what it's like working here, I think it would be most useful to just jump straight in and start talking about those. And if we've got time, we can go back. You've worked with Nike, ITV, House of Vans, done commissions for Soho House, been featured on the Jealous rooftop, took over the storefront of We Built This City in Carnaby Street as part of London Design Festival, and just the list goes on and on. So you've been incredibly busy, but I think what is particularly impressive about this list is that all the projects are so different. While sitting in your signature style. So you're a really versatile artist, and there's a lot to talk about today. But perhaps we could start with your recent success with the Concord Art Prize. Yeah. Because I saw you there last, and it was a great show. And perhaps you could tell us more about that.
Yeah, so thank you, first of all. That was really nice. But the Concord Art Prize, when I first saw it being advertised November last year, there's a new thing that I hadn't seen before. I saw the judges, and I thought it was just a really interesting idea about sort of creating a piece of work based on some music. I looked at the list of the songs, and just that one, the Willy Wonka Pure Imagination song, just jumped out to me straight away as like the only one I could really work towards. And I've been wanting to make a sculpture like the piece that I made for quite a while, and I felt it was quite relevant to my practice, fitting it in to work with that song anyway. Like I wanted to make it feel like, you know, when I see that film, I imagine the factory wandering around and being sort of amazed by the things that are going on that don't really make sense. And I wanted to make a sculpture that had that same feeling. And just having a piece that you could get adults sort of wandering around and getting that sort of childlike feeling of like, oh my God, what's happening here? And the different materials, gravity defying stuff going on. So that was the sort of driving force for the sculpture. And the fact that the prize, you know, they gave you a bit of money to help make the piece, which is obviously a good incentive. And then also just knowing that the piece was going to be shown in such a good venue. Yeah, it just ticked all the right boxes to go for it. Really pleased that I got accepted and got a chance to make the piece.
It was a really impressive piece. And when you say gravity defying, I mean, it was on a large scale. So it was looking at it, walking around the piece, it was sort of towering over you, and you couldn't really work out how the pieces all fit together, and it was very impressive just in terms of its functionality as well as its aesthetics.
With this, but also with every sort of opportunity I've got like this, I always think I've only got one chance to do it, so I want to try and push myself as well as the artwork as far as possible. And I felt this piece in particular needed to be on a really big scale for it to have that impact. So I thought I'd push myself, and yeah, I really did, because it really pushed me at the end, making the work. And there's quite a few challenging bits with regards to actually just how to make it work, like the bits where they had the squiggle floating in the space. You couldn't even see the wire that was holding up that, to sort of figure out the tension and everything with that. It was a real challenge of my fabrication skills as well as the creativity, but it was great to push myself, and I was really pleased with the results.
So when you say it was a challenge on the fabrication side, when you submitted the proposal, did you have a clear idea of what you were doing, and did you know that you could actually do it, or was you working it out a bit as you went along?
If I'm honest, it actually sort of fell basically throughout one of the lockdowns. A good friend of mine gave me a little Zoom tutorial on SketchUp, which just fell into a really good time, because at the time when I had to finish that proposal, I just learned how to do some basic 3D modelling. So I'd actually designed pretty much exactly how I wanted it to look for the proposal. I'd even rendered the materials, and I'd actually made it into a AR file as well, so I could sort of visualise it in a space. And part of my proposal was me doing a video of the AR sculpture in the studio and explaining about how I wanted people to walk around it and see it from different angles. So I very much knew how I wanted it to look. But yeah, once it got accepted, it was like, oh, now I've got to figure out how to make this thing. I always knew that I could, but I perhaps underestimated a few things along the way. But as I said before, I really enjoy that challenge of having a great idea and then figuring out how to actually make it a physical object.
Yes, I think looking at your CV and all the projects you've done, it's really clear that you're always looking for the next challenge and not just settling into creating one type of work and then almost reproducing that for lots of different either clients or collectors, which is absolutely fine if that's what you want to do. But I think this is a particularly exciting approach.
But for a while I was making what I call the drip paintings, and that was sort of, if anyone was to know me for a while, it would have been for doing those, and I did really like them. But I started making them when I was at university. I graduated in 2010, and then I think probably was working on them for about 6 years until I discovered a few different things and a few different processes with regards to the making, until I actually got to the point where I made one where it's like, this is exactly how I always wanted it to be. So I'd kind of reached that level of refinement that I'd always dreamt of. And I've made several more after that, but I no longer had that sort of stimulus to push me to continue doing it because I'd sort of reached that goal. So then it was an encouragement to try and do new things.
And so what did you do next once you realised that?
I had been doing other things along at the same time, but I would always wanted to do a few different sculptural pieces because I do like the fabrication, the making side, and a lot of the inspirations are in construction, architecture, design. So for me, playing with tools and building things and playing with materials is an important part of my practice. Making sculptures, and then more recently pieces with wood veneers, which is something I'm really interested in and probably talk a bit more about in a bit.
So to go back to the Concord Art Prize, it was a really fantastic opportunity for you to stretch yourself and work on a piece that was a large scale and you had the costs to cover that, which is quite unusual for an artist.
Yeah, it wasn't the whole costs. I'm honest, I rinsed that budget quite quickly just because when I've had the chance to do sort of big opportunities like this, it's always been the sort of time where I feel like if I'm going to invest in myself, it's the perfect opportunity, and I'd encourage anybody else to do that as well. Making a piece like this, I know there's not the best chance of it selling, but it's just so good to have it on your CV. I've been sort of dying to make a piece like this for such a long time because it references a lot of the 2D works that I make anyway, and it's been a chance to sort of just bring some of those to life. When I'm making the 2D pieces, I'm often thinking of the shapes overlapping in a sort of 3D format. So it was a really fun, amazing opportunity to actually create one of these pieces and know it was going to be in a really good exhibition, seen by a lot of people. So I just sort of thought, right, if I'm going to invest in something, now's the time to just sort of go all guns blazing at this sculpture.
It was really magnificent in the exhibition. It really stood out in the centre of the room. You couldn't ignore it.
Yeah, well, that was what I was hoping for.
That's a good tip, I think, just to make something the biggest piece.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've done it before, yeah. You've got the opportunity to just make the thing that sticks out the most.
Yeah, I think you can see that when you go to some of the gallery art fairs, that some of the galleries have just decided that they're going to have the biggest installation, biggest sculpture, and try and get as many people as possible to take photos of it for social media, which isn't necessarily the best approach, but it's quite effective, I think.
It's not always for social media or for the photos, but even when I've done the other art fair in the past, the last few times my approach has been to have a large piece because it's such a big fair with lots of stuff going on and loads of people with really busy stands. I think to stand out, for me, it's always been best to just have a sort of large focal piece. If you do have somebody who's a curator or looking to put some shows on, I'd rather be sort of getting my idea across in that way than just trying to look like I'm trying to make loads of money, like not loads of money, but just trying to do it for the sort of commercial quick sales.
I know that lots of artists do take that approach in that they create standout pieces, kind of going on to the fair now, the other art fair. When I look back at all the fairs and all the artists I've worked with across the US and the UK and Australia, your booth really stands out in my mind. I think you took that to the extreme in a good way, that you really maximise the space without overdoing it by just putting up a really standout piece on its own. It was really brave.
I wanted to stand out, but also just wanted to showcase me at my best and the best of my work. So I thought, I want to try and get a massive piece in there. If this is your chance to show my work to people, I'd rather them see the best of it rather than just a collection of smaller pieces. And I think for those works that I was showing at the other art fair, they look good on a sort of small to medium scale, but referencing people moving around cities and really built up environments. So it's so much more effective on a large scale. If I'm going to see people viewing it, I want them to see it at its best, and it just works best on that scale. So it also just happened to take over my whole booth and stand out really well. But that's when the pieces are at their most effective at that size.
Yes, I mean, it was certainly effective. Did you have a moment before the fair where I think it just feels like quite a brave approach. Did you have a moment the night before where you were thinking, hang on, should I just put up lots of prints and try and cover my costs of the booth?
No, I mean, I'd already sort of decided that I might not make any money. If I've done the other art fair, I've never sort of done it needing the money back. As far as I'm gone, that money's been paid for about 3 months before the fair. So that's gone. Obviously, if someone comes and buys it or it has interest in other works from it, then that's amazing. But it's been more about getting me and my name and my ideas out there. In the past, I tried to do a little print next to it, but every time I've tried to do something like that to make a bit of money, it's never really worked that well. So I think I'm best just sticking with the big pieces, and good things generally come at some point. It might not be straight away, but people remember you for those and remember me for making those works. So it pays off in the end, just maybe not straight away.
Yes, it certainly pays off because, as I said, it sticks in my mind, your booth, out of hundreds of artists. But also you've done so many great large-scale projects since, and I was wondering if any of those came from showing at the fair, or whether showcasing a large piece helped you visualise, say, your mural for the Jealous Gallery or for We Build This City.
Even just making a piece that big, I figured out so many things along the way with regards to the making, like making them in modular pieces, having drips flowing from one panel to another, and how to actually make that work. So just by making a piece on that scale, it meant the next time that I try and do it, it's far less intimidating. When that We Built This City opportunity came, it was me kind of pitching to them that I wanted to do it. They didn't say, could you do a drip painting around here? They said, oh, would you be interested in doing the shop front? And I thought, actually, yeah, I can do this. I've know now I can do these modular panels. I've done it before. By having pushed myself at that time, it meant that the next time it was less intimidating and it could be adapted to fit. And then the more that I've done, people, I think, then have faith in you that you can deliver on a larger scale.
Yes.
Which is just forever proving helpful that you've got previous examples. And I've made several proposals that haven't been accepted, but even just getting the proposal together and getting the presentation or PDFs or files or pictures or whatever ready, all this helps for the next ones.
Yes, absolutely.
So I think that mentality has just been really helpful, and it's definitely it makes them less intimidating.
I've been surprised since working with the fair and working with sponsors. We've worked with large companies. They often aren't looking for something completely new and original. They are looking for ideas of what they could then translate to their own projects. So to have examples of have a good portfolio of examples is really useful.
Yeah.
You can, as you say, be proactive and propose ideas to them.
Lots of people don't realise, when you scale things up, as I said before, they don't necessarily creatively get that much more challenging. Like, you're still figuring out the same sort of compositions and the same sort of overall image, but there's so many other factors to think about. Just scaling something up 10 times the size of what you've done before, you've got to figure out about the extra weight, how it fits on the wall, the extra costs, getting it there, getting it back, just everything takes way longer. So it's just planning out the actual production, which is quite a boring side of it, but at the same time it is quite important. I think can put a lot of people off.
And for both the Jealous project and We Built This City, were you quite free to use your creative ideas and put something together of your own work, or did they give you quite a strict brief?
Both were different, but they were both, the Jealous one in particular, they didn't really have any input at all. They just said, yeah, they're such laid back guys there. It's really a really fun place. And the way that came about was I just met one of the guys at an opening and I basically just said, how do I get to paint your roof? And he just said, come and have a look, and we'll have a chat. And then, it just led from that basically. But they're just really relaxed guys. So I just worked on a design. I wanted to make sure that it was good for me and made the most of the opportunity. But So that was amazing, just to have that sort of creative freedom. And then the We Built the City one, I think we'd spoke beforehand about me doing a drip painting, but I really wanted it to resemble the nightlife in Soho. So I wanted it to be a dark piece with bright colours, so it was referencing the bright lights and the nightlife, and they liked that idea. So yeah, they were just happy to go with that.
That's interesting about the Jealous commission, because it's so much about meeting people and just chatting to them. I mean, that rooftop mural is a really iconic spot to work on. It's amazing that you got that through just approaching them and talking to them.
Yeah, I think, if I'm honest, a lot of my opportunities have just come from asking people questions, whether it's face-to-face or through email. Anybody who is in these spaces, I think you find once you actually meet them, everyone's just normal people like we all are. And the worst case you're going to get when you ask somebody if you could do something is they probably just won't reply. And if they say no, they're not going to give you any abuse about it. So I've found over the years, even I think I sort of first started doing it when I was at university. I got given a list of artists to look at, one of which was an artist called Danny Rolfe. And I basically just looked at his website, saw he had a contact me section, and just emailed him asking if he ever needed a hand in his studio. And he got back, and it was just really good timing that he did. I met up with him and ended up basically being his assistant for 2 years just from that. But that was just a sort of like the first kind of experience of being like, oh, actually, yeah, these artists are approachable.
Yeah.
And it's the same with, I think, a lot of spaces or gallery owners. You realise if you get to know them a little bit, everyone's really approachable and really friendly, and you're not going to get anyone being rude to you. The worst you're going to get is somebody just ignore you.
Yeah.
Which has happened loads of times as well.
And I think usually people are ignoring other people because they're too busy to think about it at that moment. I know that I've had emails come through and it's not a definite no. It's something that's interesting, but because I'm not quite sure what to do with it at that moment, it just sits in my inbox, and I think I must get round to this. Yeah. It's almost more encouraging if you don't hear because it's pending.
Yeah, exactly. So I've been emailed about a few things as well, and that's happened the reverse as well. So, I think it's best. I think as an artist, you've got to learn quite quickly to not try and get too held up and get offended by anything. Accept that you're not going to be able to get all opportunities. I try and grow a thick skin quite quickly.
And you're really inventive with your practice. It's always exciting to see what you'll do next. And you're always exploring ways to be playful so viewers can actually interact with your work. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me more about your recent augmented reality project? I was looking at some of the photos on your website, and I saw that people had taken the sculpture to, I think maybe one in, is it the V&A sculpture room, and then inside their microwave. It just seemed really fun.
Yeah,
quite
so
random.
that was kind of slightly mental time. That was earlier this year, and basically it was shortly after I'd learned the SketchUp and the 3D modelling and rendering and about how to make those files into augmented reality. It was around the same sort of time that very early on the whole NFT world sort of started to emerge. Yeah. And me and a friend, another artist called James Hardy, we basically got quite immersed quite quickly into the social media app Clubhouse, which was basically, I don't know if you used Clubhouse. Basically, I got kind of addicted to that and just trying to learn about NFTs, and just, not that I'm massively into them now, but I just found it fascinating. It was really, like with most things, if I don't know about it, I'm just sort of desperate to just sort of figure things out, or don't want to get FOMO. So I was just sort of intrigued, and it became quite addictive. So without going into NFTs too much, I just wanted to try and figure out what they were about and how and if I could use them within my practice, and if it was relevant, if it was going to add anything. The whole time I was trying to think, what could I make that was an NFT that's not sort of just trying to do it to try and make some money, and if it could actually expand my practice. And after a few different ideas, what I basically came up with is that I wanted to make an augmented reality sculpture, and I realised that I could make it so that I could send it quite easily to anybody that had a smartphone. So it had to be an iPhone, so it did isolate a few people, but I could send it, or people could download it quite easily, and it could just pop up on their phone anywhere in the world. So I basically set up this little competition to win the original file as an NFT. And what they had to do in return was just send me an image back of the sculpture in the most sort of creative place. And it was just such a fun thing seeing people suddenly popping up from all over the place. I was getting them, I got some from I think one from Chile, several from America, one was from the Van Gogh Museum in Holland, just all over the place. And people were just getting really crazily creative, like the one from the microwave. That was a guy from Miami I've never met. I think he just heard me talking about it on Clubhouse. Okay, and he just sent a few random, one was from like an amazing sort of penthouse apartment, but the microwave one just stuck out even more. But I think I ended up having over 100 different photos and videos of people just playing with the sculpture and just sending them back to me. And it was just a really fun project. I think by the time it had finished, I actually completely lost interest in NFTs, and it was more just purely about people having fun with it, and actually changed the prize and actually said the winner would get a small physical artwork. So I thought at that point I was more interested in people just having fun with the AR technology rather than anything to do with the NFTs. So I thought by making the prize a physical artwork, it would get more engagement, which did help. But yeah, it was just brilliant. Loads of people got back to me saying how much fun they had playing with it. And I think because obviously people had not long come out of lockdown, some people were really going to town, like exploring, going to the coast, not particularly specifically to it, but if they live near the coast, they were actually really searching to try and find fun, creative spaces to play with it. So I'm really pleased that it sort of happened to me. It sort of passed quite quickly, and I haven't read anything more like that for a while. But yeah, it was a sort of completely random tangent of my practice, but yeah, really sort of fun thing to do.
It's quite funny, really, that you have that side of it, because sitting in your studio and looking around, it's quite a traditional space, and you're working in really these beautiful wood veneers. But it seems like you're able to balance creating beautiful, more traditional 2D pieces with using Clubhouse to find someone in Miami to post an AR related picture and project.
Yeah, I think, as I said, it's just a sort of, I think, the fact that I've got lots of different styles of work going on, even though they correlate, I don't really want to be or like to be tied down with one particular thing. And it's just, I think it's just a sort of desire to continue having fun and maintain a sort of playful side to the practice and to keep it stimulating for me as well. And, I think it comes with a bit of skepticism, the sort of NFT and digital side of things. But I think I was sort of happy to sort of embrace it and try and learn about it rather than just, be negative about it, and just try and figure out what the buzz is about and sort of embrace the technology. And whether I do anything more with that, just having learned about the augmented reality thing, about how you can sort of market a project through different places, is undoubtedly going to benefit me in different ways in the future. Even if it's just helping with a proposal for something else, having learnt those things, I think any time you do something like that, it's always going to benefit you in the long run in a different way that you probably would never expect.
I think having such a diverse portfolio means that you have the potential to apply for all sorts of prizes and residencies and opportunities, kind of keeping all of your options open.
Yeah, I hope so. There is, at the moment, I do actually, having said that, I do want to really focus on the more recent series of wood veneers that I am making. I am going to try and stop getting too distracted, because it is quite, the only thing is it can be sort of slightly less effective at my productivity to sort of finishing a particular series of things.
So what are you working on at the moment?
Now the sculpture's out of the way, because that was a big chunk of my time and it took a lot of energy to make that. I really want to focus on a series of wood veneer works, which I have been making for a while, using marquetry techniques. And I've actually got a commission to make 4 pieces for the entrance to a building in London somewhere. I'm not sure if I'm meant to say what it is, so I'll just leave it there. But that's through
a secret for now.
Yeah, but that's through a creative debut. I don't know if you've heard of those, but a guy called Callum who set that up. It's through him, which has been really great. We've been looking to work together for a while, and eventually he had this client come along, and my work sort of fits the direction they're going. So yeah, I'm getting to make 2 really large pieces that are going to be 2 meters by 1 meter, and then 2 75 centimeter by 75 centimeter pieces, which are going to be quite minimal compositions, which I really want to try and explore with the veneers anyway. So that's mainly what I'm focusing on now, and working on with the veneers at that size is sort of pushing. Basically, the way that I make them is using, once I've cut them all out and glued them down, the way that I get the pressure is by putting it inside like a huge vacuum bag, and that sucks all the air out. And I still can't fully understand it, but basically what happens is you get the atmospheric pressure going on top, so it works out around 3 tons a square foot.
Okay.
So you get like incredible pressure. So that's how I get really even pressure and gluing of the surface. Anyway, the limit of that bag is basically around 2 meters long, so it would be good to sort of push the sort of capabilities of what I can make in that work. And I've just been and bought a bunch of new veneers. I'm looking forward to playing with those.
You have a veneer person, don't you? A veneer shop.
There's several different ones, but there's one particular that I've been going to in East London near Galleon's Reach, which is like the very, very end of the DLR line. Yeah, it's just this massive warehouse where they normally supply veneers to people who are making, doors, furniture, so it's much more commercial reasons. So I think the people in there find it quite strange when I'm coming, because most people just order like in bulk online of just like we want £5,000 worth of veneer, oak veneers, whereas I'll come in and be walking around with the guy saying, "Oh, what's this? How much does that cost? Oh, where's this one from?" And it's, I think they kind of like it. I'm not really sure, but it's just, there's so many different ones in there. So it's just like going into Aladdin's cave of different colours, wood grains. It's such an amazing material that I'm really enjoying working with. And it's really good for me because a lot of the inspiration for the works is architecture and design. And even though the veneers are only sort of, actually the average one is like 0.6 millimeters thick, you still have to cut them out, like sort of join or glue them together side by side. So even though it's incredibly thin, they're still sort of slotted together, and I basically feel like I'm still building them.
Yeah.
Whereas, I could do the similar sort of compositions as a painting, but it makes so much more sense to me that I'm building and sort of, I feel like I'm constructing these pieces. It's a real sort of perfect material for me at the moment, and I've definitely got much more scope to explore the wood veneer pieces.
Well, looking around your studio, you have some wood veneer pieces here. Some finished, some in process, and they look absolutely beautiful. So perfect the way you've put pieces together. You wouldn't guess that you're building.
Yeah, no,
it's
thank
very
you.
Impressive.
I've been doing it for about 2 years, and it has been mainly self-taught, but I've read quite a lot of books about it. I even rang, via email, I ended up ringing up the guy who's the vice president of the UK Marquetry Society, a guy called Quentin Smith, who's much more, the Marquetry Society are much more akin to making sort of traditional sort of small boxes that you might see at your grandparents' house.
Yes. Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah.
But it was really interesting speaking to him, and I've been trying to sort of figure out things along the way. I've watched hours and hours of YouTube videos, but the main sort of thing has just been trial and error, and I've got them to a good point now that I'm really pleased with. But yeah, there's so much more to learn, and just by experimenting with the ones that you can see here, and the chance to obviously get commissions to make some as well, it just all helps the development of the process. And every time I sort of learn a new thing, and they just get better and better. So hopefully this time next year they'll be even bigger and even more polished.
Yes. Could you tell me more about your commissions for Soho House? Were those veneer pieces as well? Yeah,
so I know with the head of collections, Kate Bryan, and also there was another woman there called Katie Heller who used to work there, and she actually started working there when Kate was on maternity leave. Got to know both of those, and I got asked to do commission one for Royalty House, which is their Soho Works, and another one for their new house in Tel Aviv, which is, both opportunities were amazing for different reasons. But the Tel Aviv one in particular, because it's only after sort of really researching Tel Aviv a bit more, I didn't realise quite the Bauhaus influence in the city. It's incredible. So I wanted to make 4 pieces that weren't a direct representation, but referenced some of the buildings. So that was really fun, exploring and just using little shapes, even if it's just the sort of curve that you might see on a walkway, or some of the circular windows, or just loose references like that, so that hopefully people in the city visiting the houses would see some of those references. So that was a really fun piece. And then the other piece was quite a bit larger, but again, it was the biggest one that I'd made at the time. But it was just the encouragement sort of make you do the bigger piece. So yeah, it worked really well. It just looks really good in the space, so I'm really pleased that came about.
So are these site-specific pieces for those buildings, or will they be moved around within the collection across the houses?
At the moment they are site-specific, but they are just owned by the Soho House collection. So if for any reason those buildings closed, they might get moved around, or they'd be held until there's a relevant space in the next one. But I haven't actually seen a picture of the ones in Tel Aviv. I would really like to. But
yeah, well, for anyone listening, if you go to the Tel Aviv Soho House, send us a photo.
Yeah, please send me some photos.
I've been to a few of the Soho houses, especially in the US, and I love spotting some of our artists from the fair or other artists that I've worked with.
Yeah.
It's a treasure trove of work, different types of, like, different sizes and media, and just, yeah, it's surprising how you can spot artists once you start looking carefully. It's quite dark sometimes in there, so you don't realise until you look carefully behind you.
Yeah, no, I mean, I got to know the people from Soho House because I sometimes in the past have helped them install their collections. So I've seen thousands of the pieces that they've got, probably, across all the sites in London. And yeah, it's such a range of artworks and, all different levels of artists as well. So yeah, it's one hell of a collection.
And were you given a creative brief for those pieces or free to?
No, not really. I mean, I think because they were both, often they would just ask what works are available. And in the past, they've just bought pieces that existed already. But for these, they needed particular pieces for the site. So gave me sort of rough size. But, they're always really respectful of the artist. And they're never going to try and say, we wouldn't need it to be this colour or this, So, yeah, it was all very free for me to do what I wanted.
And do you have pieces at the moment that in your studio that are available to buy or people to come and view?
These pieces on the wall that you were talking about before, they're part of a series that I just made because I wanted to experiment making some more minimal compositions. So once they're finished, they would be available. But veneer work-wise, I actually don't have that many. A few people have asked and I need to sort of make some more so that when next time they ask, I do.
And do you do many studio visits or participate in open studios?
Anytime anyone gets in touch, I'd always try and encourage them to come to visit the studio because I much prefer talking to people about the work face to face and being able to sort of explain the techniques. I think, it's such a complicated, interesting process, marquetry and the veneers. I really enjoy sort of explaining to people how it's done. I think they get a lot more insight into the works. And pretty much everything can make that sort of relates to anyway. So I'd always try and encourage them to come. It's
a great studio to visit because there's so much to look at. It's actually very well organised considering how much you have in the space. But I can see all sorts of pieces. You've got your work with cardboard here and then a mini sculpture here. It's got that sort of tipping form that you have in your Concord art installation. And then, as you say, the wood veneer pieces, all sorts to look at.
Yeah, I like to generally have a few different things going on at the same time. Quite often I have to wait for things to dry, or I might just need a bit of space, headspace before I start doing a different element, because some of the pieces will require me getting quite a lot of tools out. You can get quite dusty, which I don't want to do all the time. So I might think, right, I'll leave that for a few days, work on this. And also just going back to the sort of it being semi-tidy, it kind of, I mean, it's quite messy at the same time, but yeah, it has to be relatively well organised. Otherwise, there'd be too much going on. It's such a busy space.
Well, all of your pieces are so precise and beautifully crafted. And I remember previously you mentioned that the artist Fred Sandbach and his thread installations at DM Beacon had a really profound effect on you as an artist. And now, since you said that, I can totally see that in your work.
Yeah, I think it was in 2009. We went with a trip from Wimbledon College of Art. We went on a trip to New York and went to Dear Beacon. I was just completely blown away by all the work.
Yeah.
Like all the huge minimalist pieces in there. There's like Richard Serra sculptures. I think there was Solar Wit in there from my memory. But there was a big Fred Sandbach installation, and I didn't actually know about him before. And it was just his thread installation pieces. So it's just simple bits of thread that sort of, I think, was held or sort of pinned into place. So you create kind of like doorways and walkways, which are just in the middle of a space. And it's just a little piece of thread. But I'll just never forget the feeling of walking up to it. And as I stepped through this kind of little thread door, I just literally felt like I was going into a different room. And it was just, at that point, the sort of strength of just such a simple line having that kind of effect on me surprised me really, and just made me think the power of a sort of geometric form is so strong within our mindset of just positioning yourself in a space, or every time you enter a building, they always take the form of the geometric entrance generally. So just our reaction to that, ever since then it's just had a real profound effect and a lasting memory.
I love Dear Beacon, and
I mean the building itself and just even the journey. Obviously you lived in New York, but the journey going from Central Station to it is amazing.
Yes, we went up on the train, and it was autumn or fall, as they say, and everyone was going up for apple picking. It was so I've never seen so many hipsters on one train.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
Deer Beacon is so beautiful. I love those sorts of sculpture centres and places. So hopefully one day we'll see one of your large-scale installations at a sculpture park.
I can hope so, yeah. That's the dream.
Yeah. Sort of my dream to have my own sculpture park. So if get to that point, I'll let you know.
Yeah.
Your balance between your beautiful work in your studio and developing your core practice, these pieces, but also then really experimenting and working on large-scale commissions and just pushing the boundaries of what you're trying to do with your works, really inspirational. And I'm sure lots of artists would be really interested to hear more about it. Do you have a top tip for an artist that's starting out?
First of all, just don't be afraid to reach out to people, even if it's just artists that you like. Ask if you could maybe pop in and see their studio and visit them, because I've done that to quite a few people, and it's just really refreshing to actually meet an artist that you really like their work, and then you meet them and realise, it's just another sort of down-to-earth normal person like you are. And I think that's always quite reassuring to know. That's what I found anyway. So that as a starting point, but also just whenever you get an opportunity, just always push yourself to go as far as possible, because you'll only regret not doing that. I think you're never going to regret going that extra mile to do something bigger and better than you perhaps even think you can. And only good things will ever come from it. That's always been my sort of, what I've been saying to myself is just bigger is better and just keep going.
I think that's good advice. Oh, thank you so much. It was a real pleasure to be here.
I know, you're welcome. It's been so nice to have you here. Thank you.
Thank you for listening this week. Please do follow Olly on Instagram at Olly Fathers, and of course the podcast at The Visible Artist Podcast. And as we mentioned in the conversation, if anyone sees Olly's work in Tel Aviv, please send him a photo. But that's all for this week. Thank you everyone who's written a review or a rating on Apple Podcasts. It means so much. I'm excited to bring you next week's conversation.